You're also aware that there are so many citizens that have been in police cells, including those that have been maimed in police cells, and the police officials, the authorities are aware of this, so there's nothing new. The only issue General Museveni was reminding the country was that he's still at it. And now that we are going into a potentially electric political period, he was probably reminding the political actors in all spaces that he's probably going to heighten his stronghold on the state structure, including the police, but also extend his dirty hand into the judiciary. It was simply a reminder. So there was nothing new from us that have been around. You are aware that myself and the colleagues in Parliament for the last 3 years have been pursuing justice for so many young activists that are rotting in jail, including the missing, for the last 4 years. So if any one of you thinks that that was a new statement from Mr. Museveni, I'm here to inform you that he was just reminding the country of what he's been doing. And therefore, there was nothing new. And therefore, for us at the DA, part of our resolve in the next couple of months and subsequently is to make sure that such impunity and abuse of processes of court and state is stopped. That's all we are here to call upon all and sundry to follow, to demand that General Museveni stops henceforth the abuse of state power and stops his interference with the work of the judiciary, because the judiciary is not an extension of the executive. The judiciary must be left to perform its duty independently. The judiciary and judicial officers must not succumb to the pressure from the state, because they have a constitutional mandate to discharge justice without regard to undue interference from wherever and from whoever. I thought that should come at the beginning of my address, so that we do not have contradiction as to what our views are. Our views are that nothing has changed. It's the same thing we are fighting to change, to ensure that impunity stops in our midst. I want to embark on the gist of my communication today to the nation. Over the last 1 month plus, public space has been awash with what the DA is about. Initially, there were conversations inconclusive as to what I had tabled before Parliament as electoral and constitutional reforms. And today, I have invited you to share a compressed version of these issues, such that nobody misconstrues our intentions. Initially, I want to state that, like I said at my last briefing to the nation, that we had written to majority political actors, platforms, informing them of our intention to interact. A few have not yet received these letters because offices were closed for the festive season, and beginning today we have embarked on transmitting these communications, and we hope we'll be able to interact with these different political platforms, including civic or citizen platforms, informal civil society organizations, to discuss the contents of our intentions at the DA. We have received a nod of positivity informally from some of them. We are going to formalize these interactions, and we shall be informing you as the fourth estate that we can share the sentiments and the views of the different actors with the rest of the nation. Now, the most important issue is, what is the DA's national transition and reform proposal about? Because I have seen media commentators not necessarily misrepresenting, but probably misconstruing what this was. You know, these are new concepts to majority of the generation here and in most media houses. So you hear commentary totally different from what we are talking about here. And I blame no one, because issues of reforms, transitions are alien issues to our space. We are used to processes where the outgoing is the incoming, and therefore you have no conversation about a possibility of a reform or a transition. And how can I blame a media practitioner who is 30 years or 40 years, who has never seen a transition, who has never seen a change? So these are alien concepts. And I am here to share with you a simplified, a condensed version of these issues that you can inform the country as to what exactly we're trying to do, and re-energize and rekindle the spirit of this nation before it collapses on our backs. And our proposal as the DA is aimed at forming a basis for a national conversation, national discussion, and debate and dialogue on the future of Uganda. And note, these are our objectives. Other people can add theirs, but these are our objectives. They are essentially 6 in propagating the idea of a national transition and reform processes. The reform processes we have talked about variously. It involves reforming a number of laws, including amending the national constitution. But to break down the principal 6 objectives: 1, to ensure key constitutional, electoral, and administrative reforms that should be effected before the next general election. Our intention is to make sure that before the next general election, potentially in January next year, we undertake critical legal or critical constitutional and political reforms before we are enthusiastic about participating in the next election. And I'll expound more on what that is about. 2, to ensure the conduct of non-violent, free, fair, credible, verifiable, and consequential elections. Some electoral processes are actually being inconsequential. I'll give you an example. For the bulk of the last elections in which I've been active, call them probably 6 of them, the only consequential outcome has only been limited to local governments and parliament. The presidency has been insulated from any consequence. That's why the media will say the incoming is the outgoing is actually the incoming. So there's no conversation as to the possibility. Say, what if the incumbent collapses in an election? What happens? So what if the incumbent is thoroughly defeated without an iota of doubt, and he hangs on? What happens? So we want a conversation because we want to have an idea of what looks like a free, fair, credible, and verifiable elections. You remember, in the last 3 elections, Dr. Ageesigika was consistent in saying, if you think I lost, can we go ahead and verify and authenticate the nature of my loss? Can we go ahead and authenticate the nature of my opponent's victory? That has never happened. So we are saying, before we go into the next election, there must be a framework capable of providing verification for the consequences or the outcomes of an election. 3, to buttress mechanisms that guarantee peaceful and smooth transfer of power from one leader to another. Apparently, there's no such mechanism because we do not have a Presidential Transition Act. We don't have a mechanism that guarantees what happens to those who leave power. People hang on to power sometimes because they fear that there's no framework to insulate them from the crimes they have committed while in power. We want to have an arrangement of guarantees, an arrangement of ensuring that those who leave power actually don't leave the country. So if they have committed crimes against the citizens, there must be a framework of understanding the nature of crimes. Are they crimes in personam? Are they state crimes? So where's the framework? 4, to campaign for the implementation of a national reconciliation and reparation plan. Gentlemen and ladies, so much has been going on over the last 40 years under the leadership of General Museveni and his people. We surely know that there are so many injured citizens. There are so many affected citizens. And somehow, the political actors believe that they can be ignored. We don't think so. A nation that ignores the injured is a nation of fools. I don't think we are. We cannot afford the luxury of ignoring citizens that have been injured over time. So what will happen to citizens whose children have disappeared under the auspices of General Museveni and his people? Should we simply say they melted away like ice? So we need a framework of truth-telling so that the country can heal from the effects, from the ravages of bad governance as we usher in a new epoch of leadership that appreciates the values of our people, that appreciates the values of human rights, the values of association and disagreement. So it's our belief that this is lacking. That's why disagreements make people get gray hair, because there's no framework for resolving them. If you disagree, you take the fastest flight when a regime changes. We cannot build a nation in that kind of arrangement. 6,